Hey there everyone, I am Pyburn, and on today's episode of CMS Connected, we're talking all about shopping in Faneuil Hall. Well, not exactly. We're actually going to be talking about e-commerce, but we are coming to you from Quincy Market in the historic Faneuil Hall right here in sunny Boston. We've got the news, we've got the CMS Insider, and of course, Amy Martyn's going to be joining us to talk about SDL Web 8. All that and a whole lot more, and it starts right now on CMS Connected. Welcome to the CMS Connected Show, the web content management industry's only news commentary show. I'm your host, Pyburn, and to my left, as always, my man, Scott Liewehr from Digital Clarity Group, and we're coming to you today from Ned Devine's Irish Pub in the Faneuil Hall Marketplace, rated number 4 on the top most visited tourist attractions in the US by Forbes Traveler. Basically, if you're coming to Boston, you come to Faneuil Hall, Scott. Pretty cool place. Ned Devine's, I don't know if it was here when you went to college. I mean, Ned Devine's has been here, has been a staple of Faneuil Hall literally forever, hasn't it?
As you know, I went to college here, and certainly Ned Devine's has always been a staple, which to be the number 4 tourist attraction in the country is crazy, given the fact that coming from Logan, less than 2 miles away from here, my cab driver had no idea what Ned Devine's was, asked me to respell it a number of times, and had a hard time finding his way here. Just goes to show, I guess maybe we should, maybe we wonder, and then we wonder why people are flocking to Uber, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ned Devine's is part of Faneuil Hall, which is
Faneuil Hall. But
Quincy
I did say
Market.
that it was in Faneuil Hall, and he still made me respell it a number of times. I think still the guy should.
I think that guy probably needs to lose his job, but we'll move on. Anyways, we've got a pretty great show for you guys lined up today. Our featured topic is going to be e-commerce. Now, should e-commerce be driving your customer experience? Now, we're going to be joined by Lawida from commercetools, and it should be a pretty interesting conversation we have with Arthur. I know we talked with him a little bit earlier today as well, and he's got some good stuff to bring to the table we're going to talk about.
He does, and he has, especially coming from that, again, we talk about content plus commerce a lot, on this show, and I think that his spin on that in particular and commercetools spin on that in particular, I think might surprise some.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, going to be a good show. We also have another installment of the Vendor Spotlight with Amy Martyn, and she's going to be having her review of SDL Web 8. And always ending the show is going to be insights from Scott on being ready for the General Data Protection Regulation. Before we begin, however, I'd like to acknowledge our CMS Connected lead sponsors who make this entire show happen. With offices in Dallas, Philadelphia, Seattle, Toronto, and Victoria, digital experience agency Falcon-Software provides solutions for all your creative design, content management, e-commerce, CRM, and digital marketing needs, as well as Digital Clarity Group, a research and advisory firm focused on navigating organizations through the digital transformation process. All right, let's get right into it. Let's jump into the top headline story with the news. And here we go. According to a new report from Gartner, businesses are cutting costs where they can rather than growing budgets. As a result, worldwide IT spending is forecasted to be flat for the remainder of 2016. Now they're turning to cost optimization efforts such as software as service, voice over LTE, and digital personal assistants instead of people to save money and simplify operations. So Scott, kind of give me your 2 cents on this one.
Yeah, I think this is, it sounds like it's bad news for many, but I think that, to say that, growth is flat in IT, I think, however, though, for those of us, for the folks who are listening to this show, there's actually not such bad news, because to be honest, the 2 places where we're seeing some growth is in both enterprise IT, in enterprise software, and in IT services. So actually, I think that there's some looking up for that. We saw, and specifically, I know that we are a global show here.
Of course.
But in North America, we're actually seeing a lot of growth, and in fact, the most growth. So in the enterprise software market, they talk about it growing by almost 6%, which is pretty significant growth for year-over-year growth. So I think that's really good. And then on the IT services side, growing by almost 4%. And in the IT services, we're seeing a lot of that growth come over from Asia Pac, in fact. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. I think where you see,
So what's fueling this though? What's really the fuel behind it?
You know, I think this, we've talked about it before, but this notion of digital transformation and investment in transforming organizations, I think that even in, an economy where parts of the world are struggling, or we're going to talk about Brexit a little bit later and other things like that, but regardless, I think organizations still understand that they have to invest in transforming themselves digitally, in being able to leverage data, take advantage of that. So a lot of that I think is what's fueling this and replacing. Also the shift that many are making to the cloud. So I think what we're also going to see over time is that they're going to be a lot more consistent from year to year, given that, if you think about enterprise IT buying the way that it used to work, was that you'd buy a big software package, and regardless of whether you capitalize that expense or not, you made a big purchase in 1 year, then you didn't buy that same sort of software again for a number of years. It's not the same now that we're in the cloud. It's going to be much less, I think, peaks and valleys. But we did see things like devices. We know that the iPhone was selling less and all of that.
Crushed, yeah.
But devices are hurting, devices are down, communications are down. But I think what we're talking about, I think things are still pretty good.
Say to our audience, to the folks at home or in their office that are watching this, it's actually a good thing.
It's not a bad thing. I think that the news is fine. Again, software is selling well, and the services around that, you're always going to see those two paired together. They're both growing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Sitecore and Microsoft, because they recently announced that the two companies plan to expand their long-standing strategic alliance to enrich Sitecore's Microsoft Azure cloud offerings over the next 2 years. Now, under the expanded partnership, customers will be able to take advantage of the speed and scale of Azure's powerful cloud platform to achieve greater digital transformation at a much faster pace. Now, Sitecore's CEO, Michael Seifert, said, quote, Microsoft is a long-term strategic collaborator with Sitecore, and we jointly serve several hundred customers worldwide. Now, this expanded partnership will help us speed the delivery of our cloud computing services to market, building on our leadership in web content management and the Sitecore experience platform, end quote. Scott, you've actually been critical in the past of Sitecore a little bit. Talk to this a little bit.
Yeah, I have. I think I am not alone in being critical of Sitecore's cloud strategy. I think that they have fallen behind others in their shift to the cloud and their move to the cloud. Not too long ago, they came up with some new pricing specifically for the Experience platform and the Experience Manager. Does this put them any further along? I don't necessarily know. To be honest with you, I think, again, as Michael said in his quote, Sitecore already had a relationship with Microsoft. It's been a very solid relationship. They continue to grow on the Azure platform and continue to promote that. I think this relationship, they talked about it being for at least the next couple of years, is good, solid ground on which to continue to grow your strategy for the cloud. I don't think this really does anything specifically for the strategy, but I'm glad that they've renewed their ongoing partnership.
Is this news for the sake of having news, in a sense, just to get something out there?
I think it's the middle of July. News cycles are low. I mean, I don't know, to be honest, but they didn't rush to try to brief me, on this, and so maybe that's why I'm uneducated about what all it includes. But I think it's just a renewal of their strategy in moving to the cloud and signaling to their customers that we're getting there too, and they're making good traction. I just don't know that this news necessarily propulses them any further along than they were already.
Got it. All right, let's talk about a next news item. Let's talk about OpenText, because their CEO, Mark Barrenechea, am I pronouncing that right? How do you pronounce it? Barrenechea, okay. Called out IBM's cognitive learning engine for its closed ecosystem of deployment and development, and urged enterprises to instead invest in his company's future cognitive analytics technology. Now, he made the case for OpenText's artificial intelligence-based predictive analytics engine to be called Magellan over IBM Watson during his keynote speech in Waterloo, Ontario-based Enterprise Information Management Company's 2016 Enterprise World Conference. That's a mouthful for sure. Now, he said, quote, our path on software is pure openness, open standards, and open algorithms. IBM's platform is closed. All right, Scott, What do you think of this? It's actually kind of a funny story to say. I mean, going after IBM, just because IBM's not with them, I think, right?
Well, I think that's what we were saying before. Is I think the funny thing here is, OpenText has a really large partnership with SAP. They have a decent partnership with Oracle. They build a lot of their platform on Oracle products. With Microsoft, the big name that they don't have a relationship with is IBM. So let's go after IBM. No, but I think also, IBM has Watson. And look, I think the thing that Watson, unfortunately, is most known for is playing Jeopardy and chess, right?
Watson hasn't really done anything other than, like you said,
I
Jeopardy.
think
that's all.
Even much to the dismay of many folks within IBM. I mean, I know folks who have taken positions over at IBM who were basically going to help and lead the strategy forward for Watson, and have been pretty disappointed at the budget they've been given and at the emphasis the company has actually placed internally. Although marketing, it's been lovely marketing.
Yeah.
And I think that Mark is jealous of that marketing, and so Mark wants to do some marketing as well. And I think that's what this is, because we don't typically look to OpenText to be the innovative, developers of new software. They typically buy software,
sit on it, milk it.
Yes, and I think that they have done some nice things with some of the software that they've acquired, but they're not exactly known for kind of leading the era. Now, if on the rosy side of things, Mark last year, even at a big analyst event that I was at, talked about how essentially he wants OpenText's core platform to essentially serve that enterprise information management is, in his mind, the new ERP, that basically you should get all the stuff from one vendor. Of course, someone's going to say that.
Of course.
That being said, there's actually there's some good thinking behind that, and certainly cognitive computing is, I do believe, is part of the future, and predictive analytics and stuff. And especially when you're dealing with a company's information and all of their information assets, I think certainly being able to have the capabilities of smart, and cognitive computing is certainly compelling. Whether Magellan right now is just talk, hype, where that's going to go, what they're going to build on that platform, I don't really know. The openness stuff, I think that's pretty funny coming from them. But whatever. But I think it's just a really good way to kind of stir up a crowd and say us too. And to be honest, it's probably as great as Watson is going to be, because again, Watson hasn't been put to much use. I would love to see, though, the use cases come from them about how they actually are putting a Magellan or a Watson to use to really kind of move us forward in this information age.
Definitely. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Coveo, because a provider of intelligent search technology announced an investment of $5 million to set up an office in Montreal, expanding beyond its current offices in Quebec City, San Francisco, and Amsterdam. Now, the new office is set to open in the heart of Montreal's Innovation District in December and expected to create over 50 new jobs in the area. Now, this investment makes a lot of sense, Scott, when you read a recent study actually saying conducted by Hexa reports that the global enterprise search market is expected to reach $5.2 billion by 2020. And one of those key participants that was named was in fact Coveo. Yeah. So, I mean, I think good for them. They've got themselves a brand new office, right? I think that's great. But what's interesting is, we talked about Coveo, I believe it was either last show or the show before. They seem to be making a lot of moves now, right? I mean, it seems like they're always in the press at this point in time.
Yes, I agree. And part of that is they've got a new CMO, Mark Floysen, who used to be the product manager, VP of product, I think, at Sitecore, in fact. And Coveo and Sitecore have always had a really good relationship. He's made the move over there. Certainly, he's getting them in the news. But I do think, there's a lot of good stuff going on over at Coveo. I mean, first of all, like the thing says, the enterprise search market is going really well. There's a lot of movement going on in that place. I do think that Coveo is a really innovative search engine. They've gone and gotten $75 million in new funding to help fuel some of their growth. That includes, I'm sure, investment in opening new offices, but also it fuels their product. They've got some really neat stuff in this kind of reveal product they talk about, where it's essentially search optimized by your crowd, which we've started to see in even some consumer platforms, but it wasn't really there in the enterprise per se. So they're doing some really good stuff. Oh, one other neat point is I think expanded or created their relationship with Avanade. Avanade is a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft, and they're a really big player in the services market, the largest by far global partner for Sitecore, and they now have a relationship with Cultivates. So I think we're seeing that product on the up and up. They've got some money to fuel. They've got a new CMO putting them in the news a lot, but their product is coming along with it. So good for them.
Very cool. Very
I
cool.
expect an invitation to the new Montreal office.
I was going to say, we'll do a show from there. Just let us know. We'll come up. All right. The UK is one of the largest e-commerce markets in the world, with 14.5% of total retail sales now online, and those online sales constituting nearly $174 billion. And though it isn't the largest country in the EU in terms of population, it is the largest e-commerce market in the region. So Scott, what will Brexit mean for the e-commerce market and for the cross-border e-commerce that involves UK merchants and buyers?
Yeah, so Jill wrote, she wrote a great article on this on our website, and you should really read it. It's jam-packed. If folks are interested in e-commerce, as they probably are if they're tuning in today, and specifically in cross-border, she does some of the best analysis in this space. As it talks about, for the UK economy, e-commerce is a really big factor. It's almost 15% of their entire retail market, which is really big for them. But I think that Brexit, and by the way, I was in the UK when the vote happened, so that was a pretty fun time to be there. Yes. But I think it's pretty significant for them. Obviously, there's currency implications, right? So one thing we know is that the currency took a hit. And so certainly from an export standpoint, that's going to grow significantly as people try to go jump on to take advantage of the currency depreciation and buy from UK vendors. And then obviously the opposite is true for those in the UK. They're going to have a harder time purchasing products from outside of the country as their currency is hit. But I think that, there's a bigger implication here. We've talked a lot about companies going global, and when they go global, specifically their European expansion strategy usually goes through the UK. When a company wants to open up an office in Europe, they oftentimes, especially coming from the US or from the Western, they go and open an office in London first, and London becomes their European hub. And while the UK economy and environment is very different than the rest of Europe, it's a really good kind of jumping off point. Similar in culture, etc. I don't know that that's necessarily, and Jill points out that might be at risk now, given the laws, the tariffs, all the things that are kind of unknowns about that. So that might not be so appealing anymore. So they could really be impacted by that pretty significantly.
Interesting stuff indeed. All right, he is Scott Liewehr. I am Tyler Pyburn. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a few seconds with Arthur Lawida talking all about e-commerce.
So you've got a great website with hundreds, maybe even thousands of visitors. That's great, but each one has their own background, interests, motivations, and goals. But you are showing them all the same content. Not very clever. The solution is content personalization, allowing you to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time in the right form. So let's see how content personalization works.
Welcome back to the CMS Connected Show, the CMS industry's only news commentary show. I'm your host, Tyler Pyburn, along with Scott Liewehr from Digital Clarity Group. And again, we're coming to you from Ned Devine's Irish Pub, Faneuil Hall Marketplace in downtown Boston. Place is awesome. There's no other way to put it. Now, price isn't the sole reason you shop at Amazon or eBay. Now, these sites have a competitive advantage that really no other e-commerce retailer has. Now, they offer the best customer experience more times than not, which begs the question, should we be building your digital strategy around the content management system or the e-commerce system? Now, we actually want to discuss this a little bit further with our featured guest, Arthur Lawida, president at commercetools. Welcome to the show, Arthur. How are you doing today?
Good. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Good to hear. So, Scott, let's kind of get this going. Let's kind of delve right into it. Can e-commerce solutions offer enough to deliver a unique customer experience? Or are they best served to leave it alone, let the traditional CMS actually fill the web ecosystem tools? Where do you start, really?
Everybody that I know in e-commerce is worried about Amazon, right? Everybody's going to Amazon to buy anything they want. the reason they go there is because it's convenient, it's a great customer experience, and people are struggling, or brands are struggling to find a way to bring these customers back to their site. The only way to do that is by also providing a great experience for the brands. When customers come to a brand site, they need to find not only a great experience, but compelling content. And so what we're really focused on is providing the commerce infrastructure as a service, but allowing digital agencies and the brands to build these great sites that have tons of content that bring people back over and over again to their site and have them purchase there and build that brand affinity and allow them to do things like, if they have stores, then send them into stores and take away the reason why people go to Amazon.
Interesting. I think that's so. So do you find yourself then? I mean, we talk about the rise of commerce, and certainly I've been in the content management space for a long time, and this is a show called CMS Connected, so focused on a lot of those content folks. Do you find that folks who were more focused before on creating a great experience from a content standpoint are finding themselves being pulled more and more into the commerce play? Are we doing more and more online in that way? And do you find these kind of two areas coming together in your business?
Yeah, if you look at many of the analyst reviews of this, content and commerce have been two separate organizations inside of a business, right? And the reason for that was commerce platforms were so complicated. You would have to go out and buy specialized software with huge license fees. You'd have to find really smart guys that cost a lot of money to be able to develop on them. And it stopped marketing departments from being in charge of the commerce experience. And what we're finding now is that because we have platforms like ours that provide commerce as a service, the marketing people, the people who really know the customers can actually start to be in charge of what the commerce experience looks like. They don't have to be limited by, oh, my commerce platform won't do that, or there's some feature that I want that I can't have. Digital agencies can go out and they can dream up anything they want from a commerce experience, build it in the CMS that they have, the technology that they already know, and then commerce as a service comes in and just injects commerce wherever they need it.
Interesting.
I had to go back and actually to read your company again. Commercetools. I mean, to me, when I'm hearing you talking about commerce, it seems a little strange that we're a commerce platform vendor is talking about CMS first.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do you really want to start there in particular?
Because the truth is that people who are buying things online want great experiences. And if they're not getting it, they're going to go somewhere else. So if you go out and you buy $1 million licensed product, and then you spend millions of dollars trying to innovate on it, you're never going to get any ROI unless you can provide a great customer experience. And commerce platforms traditionally don't focus on, even though they have CMSs embedded in them, if you look at any of the monolithic platforms like Magento or ATG or Hybris, they have a CMS, but it's not their focus. What we're really looking at is a world where you're using the best of breed to do every single thing that you want, and we provide the best of breed commerce as a service, but we want the CMS vendors who spend night and day figuring out how to do great CMS, delivering CMS.
So that's interesting because so many talk about this kind of notion of content and commerce coming together. It certainly has started to do that an awful lot more in the last 5 years or so. And the idea has often been, like you say, which comes first? You kind of go content heavy supported by commerce or vice versa, or some hybrid of the two. What you're saying is get the content right, get the experience right overall, and inject some commerce, which I think is really relevant. Is that the case for all businesses, do you feel like? I mean, are there some businesses or are there some instances where you feel like it warrants, maybe because it's purely retail, or is this more a B2B recommendation? Is this more, does it make a difference on the type of business, or do you think that recommendation is fairly consistent across the board? Yeah,
it does. I think that there is a case for purely a monolithic platform approach, and that's if you just have a website. If you're an online merchant and all you are is online, you have one website and you sell it, I think that there are a lot of platforms that can be really great for you. But if you're omni-channel and you have many, you have retail and you have distribution and you have online, or if you have many different channels online, Or if you're a B2B company, and this is we're finding a great use case for this commerce as a service here, you're a B2B company and you have this homegrown ecosystem that's taken you 20 years to develop. And some of it's you've purchased, some of it you've developed. And then an e-commerce platform vendor is coming in and they're saying, oh no, buy my software, and here it's a completely different technology than you ever used. Yep. So change your enterprise architecture just to use commerce. We know with our system, the only way you can get to us is through a REST API, so that the CIO can keep his enterprise architecture, his or her enterprise architecture. He can drive the ship as far as what technologies they're going to use.
Sure.
Integrate in commerce wherever you need it, not have to do this whole huge platform effort. Sure. And so really what we're focused on are omnichannel and B2B.
Great. So talk to me, what's the difference between experience-led commerce and brand-centered commerce, and really why is it important shift for retailers to make that right now?
Yeah, I think experience-driven is really a combination of having a very great, easy-to-use experience when you come to buy things, and then also traditionally brands had brand sites that were separate from their commerce, right? You'd go there and you'd have this great brand experience. You go to like say Sephora before they, and you have this beautiful experience about their their content and their messaging, and then when you went to purchase, it would be this traditional store. Left-hand nav, browse, search, and you would lose the entire brand experience in that shopping. What we're saying is keep your brand experience and inject shopping where it's most appropriate. So it doesn't feel to the customer like you're selling them all the time, or that they even have to go somewhere else to sell, that the selling experience is integrated into the brand experience.
Interesting. And so is Sephora one good example, or do you have some examples of some thoughts of maybe customers of yours or even others that have done a really good job of that? Because you started out by talking about Amazon, which I think is a really valid from an e-commerce standpoint, and certainly it's something that we all relate to. But it's not very content heavy, right? I mean, It's really, you go there to go buy something. And I'm there and I'm looking, and that's basically what it is. So it's not really much of an example of the kind of experience, the brand experience with commerce infused into it. So can you give us an example of that?
Sure, Sephora is not a customer of ours. They're a great example of this. I would say that a customer of ours that's doing some incredible things is Blue Star Nutraceuticals. Okay. They sell almost 98% of their traffic comes from Facebook video.
Really?
They sell bodybuilding supplements, right? And so you watch this great video. It's actually providing you a ton of great information about not only how to use the product, but how to be a better athlete. And then at the appropriate time, they present an offer. The offer is then right there embedded into the video that you're looking at, and you can check out immediately. There's no store experience at all. We call those, you might call them digital innovators, people out there on the leading edge of what they're trying to do with commerce. Sure. And it's no store, and they do an incredible business in the United States.
So with that in mind, though, I mean, if they're purchasing right there on Facebook, is there even a need for a WebCM platform at all at that point? I mean, is it truly just we're moving everything to Facebook? I mean, because that's the thing. I've seen that a few times now where I've purchased stuff directly on Facebook, not even going to the website anymore. So do you even need that anymore?
Well, you have to broaden I think the definition of web CMS is broadening. If you look at the Adobe suite, right? There's these great tools to work with video and to work with images, and then how do you get, right? So all of them, Hippo is another great example of personalization. And so it's not just that you're sending them the video, you're making sure the offer that they're getting is relevant to their age, their demographic, where they come from, so all of it. And so it's not just about Facebook, it's about the offer you're presenting, and it's about how to present that offer so that they actually buy.
In context and in an omni-channel environment, like you said, where it's wherever it is, because you might come through Facebook. My dad, who's never had, he might not be buying workout products either, but he's probably not going to get there through Facebook if he ever were to do so. So valid point.
Okay, excellent.
So where do you see this whole thing going in the next 5 years? This whole commerce play, where is it going in the next 5 years? And I wonder if I can actually ask you to just comment specifically on the whole VR, AR thing too, and whether that you think that plays into the future of commerce.
That's going to be huge. I mean, we're playing around now with VR, and one of the
virtual reality.
Virtual reality, right?
Augmented reality.
Yeah.
Things like Blip R and things like
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind commerce as a service is you can inject commerce anywhere, right? And so whether you're in VR, looking at a virtual shelf, whether you're on your mobile device, whether you're in, you have the same back-end platform that works across all of those. Now, we believe that platforms are going to disappear. Platforms as you know them, right? That you're not going to go out and license anything. You're going to use, and this is also true, we believe, from the CMS perspective, that CMS vendors are going to start to have more and more less and less of a platform, more and more of a bunch of services that you're going to be able to access when you're building great user experiences. And we see that the consumer, it used to be that the business was in the center of this transaction. The consumer would have to figure out how to buy the business's products. They'd have to call them up. They'd have, the business was dictating this. And now with Instagram, Facebook, virtual reality, all the things that are coming up, the consumer is now in the center of this. And businesses have to figure out how to get their products, content, anything they want to the consumer where the consumer is.
Hence the Facebook point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. That's that business coming to where its audience
right
is.
there. Which
That's
I think, at the end of the day, that's kind of just the marketing piece of it all, right? I mean, you want to go where your people actually are. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk said it at one point, the marketers, we just end up screwing up the places where everybody end up being, right? Email was great, and then all of a sudden we said we have to go in email, and all of a sudden we screwed up email. No one wants to be on it anymore, right? It's the same type of mentality, isn't it? Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you think, I want to just, this augmented reality, my kids got Pokemon Go last week. Have you seen this?
I did too last week.
Yeah, I got it last night.
Just to try it because
I had someone
I
walk
saw
into
it
my
every
driveway
single
while I
feed
was
that I
mowing the
had.
lawn.
There was some article by some fairly smart person writing about the implications. One was like Psychology Today and like the implications of, it was just from the Wall Street Journal to Psychology Today. I was like, okay, now I'm missing something if I don't do this. So I did do it.
Yeah.
But, so what do you think?
Well, look, now you're using your phone because it's the device we have, and you're seeing things on your phone where you are that are interesting. In that case it's Pokemon, but you can imagine that you're in a store, the same kind of experience. Absolutely. Here's the stuff that you're looking at something, but it doesn't have what you want, so it's showing you what you have. And you take it a step beyond. You're sitting in your chair, you have your virtual reality goggles on, and you're having the same kind of experience. So it's not, it's not going to be ever, here's my platform, come to me and get it. It's always going to be, how can I get the product, services, information to the person where they are? Exactly. And that's going to be the big change.
They could be walking down the street and see a shirt that you like and look through some app on your phone at what somebody else is wearing, and it's going to be able to allow you to buy it there.
Absolutely.
Well, actually, they're doing our last episode was at Fenway Park. They have one of the fastest growing virtual reality sets actually inside of Fenway itself. You can actually put on the headset. You're all of a sudden looking around. You're in a jersey. You see Poppy right there. Guess what? You're actually in the pro shop now. So that's what they've started to try to bring to the table as well. Now, one of the questions you would actually, when we were kind of going back and forth before the actual show itself, you started talking about European retailers. Talk about, why do you think European retailers are actually further ahead in kind of this whole approach right now?
I always go back to a company called Zalando. They started only a few years ago, and they had this, this idea of the separation of back end and front end. And they said, look, we're going to build a killer back end, and we're going to build up these internet companies really fast. And we're going to do it because we can innovate on the front end without having to worry about any of the back end stuff. And they actually hand built this platform that's very much like the platform that we have, that we make available to, mid-sized companies and everybody, and they went from like 0 to $5 billion in revenue in 4 years. And they did it because they were letting their marketers go crazy, right? Market any way you want to. And what we've done in the commerce industry, at least, is constrain the marketing teams. And it's been, we've told them, you can only do what we let you do. And so a marketer will come and say, hey, I want to do this promotion. And then the guy is like, oh, the platform doesn't support that, right? And so that answer comes back to marketers enough, then they kind of throw their hands up and say, well, what can I do, right? So that's a big difference. And so what we're saying now is, let's have ways to unleash the power of the marketer, who's the only person in the company who really knows the customer, and let them do what they want. and let's provide the tools through a great CMS and commerce as a service so they can do it.
Is there something specific about them being about the European retailer though that made it unique, like a unique value proposition that they have to offer? Like you were specific, I thought, about the European notion though.
You know, I also I see the green thing going on in Europe a lot more, and I think what I've seen is that European customers are much more connected to their brands than we are. And they're pushing the agenda on their brands where they're saying, look, you have to be green. You have to deal with me in the same way that, in the way that I want to be dealt with. And that's forcing European retailers to be more innovative in that process. Where in the US, I think that hasn't flipped yet. And we still, consumers don't understand the power that they have to get brands to operate in a way that they need them to.
Not demanding enough.
Demanding enough. Who would have thought that U.S. consumers are not demanding U.S. anything?
U.S. anything, not demanding enough. That'd be the last thing that came out of anybody's mouth. But it's interesting. You mentioned that. I mean, I think the last point we've been talking about this. I mean, literally since we started the show about, going back to the marketing battling, especially here in the States, battling with the CIOs. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. This is happening now for 4 years. I mean, even more so now than ever. But it just continues. Are we ever going to see a turning point though with that? Realistically, I mean, I don't.
Where the turning point in what between the
marketers and the tech team.
Oh.
I mean,
I think you've seen a lot of turning point, and the point that Arthur's making, I think, is this notion of kind of a zero footprint, platforms and services and things that are in the cloud, and now suddenly you are able to, whether it's a marketer or any line of business person within an organization, now able to kind of much more control their own kind of destiny. There's no longer, I think IT can be much more of a strategic value add in terms of helping the organization figure how it's going to progress and become more digital and leverage its digital capabilities, but they no longer have to be the bottleneck through which everything kind of goes in and out of, which is the way that it kind of used to be before for a long time. Before you kind of had to go through them, now they're helping to guide where you're going.
And we do take care, we're a German company. Our software works, it's secure, so you have to check those lists for the CIO because their job is to make sure that everything works, nothing gets, broken into. So, you have to check, and we do. And once you get over that hurdle, then the CIOs tend to come on board very quickly.
So, Arthur, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. For everybody out there, where can they find you? Where's the best place to get in contact with you?
Well, our website is commercetools.com. Our office, we have offices in New York, Chicago, and soon to be Durham, North Carolina, which is one of our development offices. So we're actually a global company, right? So we have our main offices in Munich and Berlin, and you can reach me at arthur.lawida@commercetools.com.
Very cool. He is Arthur Lawida. Scott Liewehr. I'm Tyler Pyburn. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few seconds, where we talk to Amy Martyn for our vendor spotlight.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.
Welcome back into CMS Connected, and we are now outside of Quincy Market here in Faneuil Hall, and it's time for the vendor spotlight. Now, with corporate headquarters in Maidenhead, United Kingdom, SDL has over 1,500 enterprise customers, 400 partners, and a global infrastructure of 55 offices located in 38 countries, and they're listed on the London Stock Exchange. Now, SDL Web 8 combines SDL's WCM solution with digital media management, targeting, testing, personalization and localization capabilities. Here to tell us a little bit more about SDL Web 8 is Amy Martyn from Falcon-Software. Amy, how's it going today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for having you. You're always on the show. You're a mainstay.
Oh, well, thanks for having me again.
Of course we love to have you, Amy. I love you. Anyways, give us the background of SDL Web 8 and how it came into fruition.
Yeah, definitely. So you kind of took everything I was going to say in the first paragraph, but that's okay, no worries. I could actually talk for hours about SDL. They're been around for so long and have so much to offer. So like you had said, SDL Web is a combination of 5 of their platforms. The first one being the SDL Mobile, Quatron, Safeguard, Smart Target, and Tridian. And that all happened about 1.5 years ago. And really the reason, the strategic decision behind this was really to just have a more simple offering for their customers and just, take out some of that confusion which everybody deals with on a daily basis when they're looking for a CMS. And I really think they hit this bang on. Like I had just said, if you're looking for a new CMS platform to use, you're going to start looking at demos, you're going to investigate, then you're going to find one and be really happy with it and all the functionality that they said they were going to get. But the vendor then has to go back to you and explain that all the nice shiny things that you really wanted are extras and add-ons. So SDL really wanted to combine all these extra add-ons into one platform. And they only have really the 2 extra packages of add-ons on top of that, which is the Rich Media Management Platform and the Targeting and Personalization.
Amy, talk about the critical features. What do you think would be the most critical features released in version 8?
Right, so this is challenging as well. There's so many innovations just released. Well, not just, it's been out for about 1 year, 1.5 years. But I had the privilege of speaking with 2 of their directors. First one was, and they were at the same time, but Arjen van den Aker, which is their product marketing director, as well as Nuno Linhares, who is their director of product management. And so they kind of gave me the summary of the 3 most dynamic features or innovations from their last release. First one being, it would be the adoption of REST with the core. And what that just means is that it's not an option anymore for customers. It's just included. They've actually came out with this API, REST-based API in 2011, but now it is incorporated in SDL Web. And really, they're making it a more predominant role as the software rolls out. And then second one would be this whole conversation about headless CMS. So headless CMS is getting so much hype right now. And really all that is it's a depository where you can keep all your content, but doesn't have a website, doesn't have a face. So SDL is really in a unique position because they offer this headless CMS, this depository, but they also offer a website that goes with it. So, and that's exactly what organizations are needing. They're needing to have a website, of course, but they need somewhere to leverage all this other content so it can speak with all their other mobile apps. Maybe they're dealing with airport kiosks, in-car, in-flight entertainment, who knows, any of the Internet of Things. So, so that's a big one as well. And then looking at the third one. So what everybody is talking about right now is the Digital Experience Accelerator. And really what this is, it's an implementation toolkit that is helping their current and existing clients and new clients to launch brand new websites with saving so much time and effort, 70%, up to 70%, so it's quite incredible. They also made the decision to make this open source and free of charge, so anybody can use this in real time. And now what's happening with this, all the great side effects that are coming with this, is that the SDL community is embracing it, and they are actually building their own accelerators on top of it. So looking at an example of one of their customers, they have a partner which is in the Asian Pacific who just brought on a huge Chinese airline who did this whole implementation using their new product of SDL Web in less than 16 weeks, which is phenomenal if you think of going from one platform entirely to a new platform.
Amy, let's talk about price point. Would you say that SDL happens to be the most expensive CMS currently on the market?
Well, it definitely wouldn't be one of the cheapest, but I definitely, as I talk to the directors, I really feel that they are in line with their competitors. If you look at their prospects, they're dealing with large enterprises that are at least $1 million in revenue. So those types of organizations are not looking for a suite platform. They're looking for something that's going to integrate with all their other investments. Yeah, they're really in line with their competitors like Adobe and Sitecore, starting at about $250,000 annually, and they offer, their basic pricing structure that they did in the past. So it's a licensing and a maintenance fee. They also offer term payments, where it could be a year, 2 year, or 3 year. And then they also offer their new cloud offering, which is an annual subscription, but you can cancel. And really their thoughts behind this has really surprised them at what has happened in the last couple of years. If you look at, if you had asked them what their customers were going to want 2 years ago, hybrid or full cloud, they really have thought people would have said hybrid. But now they're really realizing, it's coming very surprising, that people are wanting full cloud. They're wanting to give their entire web content management system to SDL, and then they can post it to the cloud, they can do the maintenance, they can do the upgrades, the patches, and what the client is then doing is keeping track of the whole experience that is happening on their website. So that content, that valuable content, is being kept on their servers.
Now, just on a side note, but I'm sure it's actually on the minds of many, what's been the progress like since the new CEO was hired?
Yeah, so he was hired April 18th, 2016. And since then, of course, he's come in, he's got lots of questions. He's trying to get up to speed. He's trying to know the ins and out of the entire company. And he's focusing mainly on the business cases. So long term, they really think that what's going to be happening is they're going to see faster releases coming out. From a financial perspective, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like myself, if they've seen increases profit-wise since April. They said it's just too hard to tell as of right now. They can't give those numbers out publicly, as they are a public company. They're working on that though, and they did say that there's going to be a report released in August where they will be able to share more information. But I think that what they have really seen is a positive effects in the marketplace, signs that they are moving in the right direction, and that's really especially with their existing customer base, but also in the analyst community.
And did you manage to hear from any of SDL's customers, partners, or if they're liking, disliking the latest version?
Yes, I did. I had the privilege to speak with, his name was Dominique LeBlanc from Tazoo, one of SDL partners. And this organization is huge. They're one of the world's largest and fastest growing independent customer experience agencies. And in fact, the largest provider of SDL services in North America. So here's what he had to say. So as you are, or Tazoo is an SDL partner, has your organization and your clients really, jumped into using the new SDL Web platform and their many innovations?
Yes, we have. So I think we were already engaging with SDL during the beta phases of SDL Web 8. So I think, we being a long-standing partner, I think we work with SDL during their development phases to sort of help give feedback on the new developments, where we see our customers heading, and try to feed that back so it fits into the roadmap. So very early on, we started using the Web 8 platform and engaging with SDL. I think we've seen an adoption. We already have a number of clients that are in production with SDL Web 8, and I think we continue to see a ramp up in terms of existing SDL customers that are not upgrading to the platform. Maybe some noteworthy example is we have Kone, which is a Finnish company specializing global vendor. I've been using SDL Web 8. Essentially, they were one of the early adopters. So part of the beta program, we started looking together with SDL, okay, which joint customers could we start fitting to use Web 8? And Kone was sort of one of the early takers. And I think they could benefit from Web 8. I think Web 8 is a lot of innovation in terms of the underlying platform with cloud innovations in there, cloud services, and that fit really the bill for Kone and us and SDL. So I think we sort of, trifecta essentially started using the solution there. We also have a large coffee company headquartered in Seattle that is using Web 8 today as well, which is also in production. And again, another global rollout of content, digital experiences, web and mobile.
So is there certain features that your customers are really talking about, the good and the bad?
So I think probably the most noteworthy innovation SDL brought with Web 8 would be the Digital Experience Accelerator. I think this is sort of a different take in terms of how companies need to look at their digital experiences. So it's sort of a framework that captures a lot of existing template types, presentation styles, but really separates properly how design element can come into there. So for us, this was a big step, and also for our customers, we're looking into this because it solved one of the common challenge with WCM implementation is that you tend to have to do a lot of plumbing before you start seeing the first content experiences start getting created. And I think this really creates that framework so we could really quickly develop new sites, micro sites, but at the same time, the separation for design elements, so working with a creative team and agencies team in parallel really is probably one of the big feature that we see a large benefit for it. I think in addition to that, I think underneath the hood, SDL Web 8 is containing a lot of changes in terms of architecture, which I think even today we ourselves haven't really tapped into the full potential of. So I think if we look at the new innovation they brought with regards to the content service architecture, I think SDL calls this an headless CMS or something along those lines. But I think, for forever, I think the WCM market's been broken down into, single tenant architecture or decoupled architecture. And I think with Web 8, there's this notion of almost a third tier where we can create and publish content towards a true microservice architecture and then have our delivery channels separated from that, which is really well suited for if you think of web or if you think of mobile channel experience. So we can actually, from our side, really specialize the design of the rendering of that content. So not only make it available across channel, but really have dedicated applications inside of the channels themselves. Beyond that, I think SDL has always been known for their translation functionality. I think Web 8 doesn't disappoint there. There's more functionality in terms of not only sending content to translation, but a lot of attention to the translation review process. So it's now possible, which I know for our customers, was a long time request, which is that in-context review. So while you're in translation, so if you think of a product launch you're launching across global markets, being able to review before the translation is complete at a marketing level how the German content or the Dutch content is looking, and then informing your translation service provider that it's okay, you can then ship that, then bringing that all back solves a big demand that we saw in our customer base.
And so what do you really see, in the future, the crystal ball question of what's kind of coming down the pipeline for SDL Web?
So I think, SDL has obviously announced this new strategy, and I think this shift of focus. I think, how we see the WCM market, so I think we're a strong partner of SDL, but I think we also, in our practice areas, work with different types of technology as well, campaign management, digital asset management. So I think that this notion of SDL refocusing and really trying to be this best-of-breed content management provider and really this ability to integrate with other systems, I think makes a lot of sense. I think there's different players in the market. I think it's almost becoming a suite play or best of breed play. So I think what I would expect is more integration with third-party solutions. So again, really looking at the digital experience landscape, and rather than trying to plow alone into that, setting up some strategic partnership with innovative vendors in categories that SDL doesn't necessarily play in, I think is what we expect, we're looking for. I think we've had discussions with them. I think that's going to be pretty important, and I think it can make a pretty big difference for some of our clients, which are building these big platform with many technologies. Beyond that, I think it is a world of end users, so usability, seeing changes to facilitate how one person can essentially create, publish really rich experience across a variety of channels. Looking at that aspect, the usability of the product and the connectivity with all these technologies together, I think are some of the things we look forward to seeing.
Well, it definitely sounds like you had a great and interesting conversation with Dob, and definitely a big thank you to him for taking time out of the day for that interview. And of course, Emily, thank you for that value-packed vendor spotlight. Now, just before we let you go though, I don't think we actually mentioned it previously, but this was your last vendor spotlight for some time, right?
It is. This is going to be my last one for quite some time. I will be back. But my husband and I were going to be growing our family, and we're so excited for our new addition happening very, very soon. But I'm leaving you in very good hands. My replacement that's going to be coming in, her name is Laura Myers, and she is going to just do an exceptional job. I just know it.
Amy, that's so cool. It really is. And of course, from all of us here on the team, we obviously wish you, your family, nothing but the absolute best.
Oh, definitely. And I'm going to miss you guys too.
I really do love it. Just so cool to hear. All right, Amy, good luck again. We'll see you soon, and we'll see the folks at home in just a few seconds because we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back with our CMS Insider.
So you've got a great website with hundreds, maybe even thousands of visitors. That's great, but each one has their own background, interests, motivations, and goals. But you are showing them all the same content. Not very clever. The solution is content personalization, allowing you to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time in the right form. So let's see how content personalization works.
Welcome back to CMS Connected. I'm your host, Tyler Pyburn. Time for the CMS Insider, and the question is, are you ready for the GDPR? The answer, no, we're not. Now, that actually was offered by the majority of participants who attended DCG's webinar on the European Union's recently adopted General Data Protection Regulation. Now, the question of readiness was more than just kind of a catchy title from these guys at DCG. They actually really wanted to understand where organizations are today with their knowledge of the GDPR, and more importantly, their initial assessment of their readiness to comply. Scott, explain this to me, because I don't quite understand it just yet. We talked about off camera. It sounds crazy, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
Kind of explain it for our viewers.
Sure, I will. I think that it's really scary right now that many are not talking about this more. This should be on everyone's minds, and it's not yet, but we want to put it on yours. Tim Walters on Digital Clarity Group's team is an analyst, and he's been writing about this and talking about privacy and specifically the GDPR for a while. What it is essentially a new regulation that, as Tyler said, was passed recently. It takes effect on May 25th, 2018. So we've got a little less than 2 years to prepare for it. But it is a really wide implication that basically says that for anyone that does business with a citizen of the EU, which I guess maybe now no longer includes UK citizens. Anyway, that makes it a little bit easier, just got easier. But for anybody that does business with anyone from the EU, essentially, we have to honor their data privacy rights, essentially. They've just gained a whole lot more rights. So basically, if you've done any work with them, number one, you can only use EU citizens' data for exactly the explicit purposes in which it was intended. So you cannot be using it for other purposes. So you can't use it for email blasts or marketing or cross-pollinating with some other purpose. You can only use it for what they gave it to you for. Number two is that they need to be able to port their data. They need to be able to take it back. If at any point I buy from Amazon and Amazon has, captured my likes and my interests, I need to be able to at any point say, Amazon, forget that I ever transacted with you. You need to take that information out of your system and give it all back to me. That is a huge, huge, huge implication. And specifically, because they want businesses to take this seriously, they are making the fines much more akin to the way that Switzerland handles their speeding tickets. If you've ever gotten a speeding ticket in Switzerland, you're a lot more poor because they base their speeding tickets on a percent of your income. The GDPR, likewise, will be a percent of revenue. Up to 4% of an organization's revenue, top line revenue, is at risk if you violate GDPR regulations.
Think about that though for a second. I mean, really stop and think about that. Think of like the Walmarts,
Exactly.
right? We're talking $150 billion companies. 4% of that?
$6 billion in that particular, if it's $150 billion, I'm not sure that's but if it's $6 billion, yeah. They don't want to receive revenue from this. They want businesses to be so scared by this, which is why I'm surprised that it hasn't been on everyone's mind. because it is coming in May of 2018, they want people to be so scared by this that they do not violate this privacy and trust that they've created with folks.
So, Scott, I mean, I'm a video guy, but I'm a video marketer. So I look at marketing and everything we talk about on the show. Even today, we talk about a content-driven website.
Yeah.
Is it the end of kind of marketing as we know it? I mean, that's what it seems like to me because you can't do it.
Yeah. So I think that it certainly changes marketing as we know it. I mean, as we talk about on the show many times, we are trying to be much more, it's all about creating that personal conversation with the buyer or just whoever your marketing audience is to, context driven, all of those things. This is not saying that you can't create a personal experience for somebody, but it is saying that you can't create a personal experience in an experience that they haven't given you permission to use that personal data for. So, for example, we mentioned Coveo's new search engine tool and how it is based on the wisdom of your crowd. Well,
I was going to say, that's what I wanted to talk about next was the vendors, because this is the part is really nutty to me, is this is what they're building their business off. That's their product line.
Yes, it is. So let's go there and then we'll get back to that. I'm sorry, you're right. The huge implications on the brands, but let's talk about the vendors. So a Coveo, as an example, who is creating a whole new search product that basically make your search results smart based on the information they also have about your crowd, right? Your crowd, which might be me as your friend, I didn't give Coveo or anybody using Coveo's products their permission to use my data to enhance your search results. I gave them my data because I wanted to go and buy some product. That's the only lane they can swim in with that particular data. They can't use it to go enhance your search result. So, and at any given time, I need to be able to say, give me that back. So the implication on vendors, the Adobes and the Sitecores and the Marketos and the many vendors that are out there basically building their tools based on algorithms using data, and not just the person's data, but other data around there, are vast and significant, both in terms of, again, whether or not those algorithms are viable for those who are transacting with them from the EU. So first, even being able to identify that somebody's from the EU, then how they can use that data. And then certainly advertising as we know it is completely different, because advertising is all about you're getting advertisements from companies that you never gave permission to advertise to you because they got that information somewhere else, right? So advertising as we know it changes. So really big implication. And then the notion of, like, think about an SAP who has data running through their system about particularly in their finance system and in the ERP system and in the all over the place, that they need to be able to, at any given moment, allow their clients, so the Walmarts of the world, to be able to say, we need to be able to take Joe Schmo's data and give it all back to him and remove it from our system. What kind of implication is that on a vendor? Huge.
Yeah. Go back to the business, though. I cut you off. Apologize.
Yeah. No. And I made the segue wrong, but so think about, again, a Walmart or a Sephora, that Arthur was talking about earlier. The ability to now, so those who are in the US and think, I'm not in the EU, I don't need to worry about this so much. They are, in fact, affected by this, because certainly most of us are global and you're selling to folks from across the world. So everybody's basically affected, number one. Number two is, again, if we are creating experience built on data from our customers and we're trying to use the data to try to go get more customers, or use what we know about those customers to go cross-pollinate and offer them other products that they didn't explicitly ask about, all of those implications are vast and huge. So there's a lot for brands to go look into with this, because the fines are really huge. Tim Walters gave, in a recent webinar with us, a really good analogy about this. He talked about it as, it's like if you lend me your car, right? If I say, hey Tyler, I want to buy, what kind of car do you have? Is it nice? Is it worth me getting?
It's a pickup truck. I'm a redneck. Okay,
all right. So pickup truck, I want to do a little bit of moving, right? And so I want to borrow your pickup truck. Now, implicit in that is that I have to use that to basically go do my move, right? I can't use your pickup truck and go drive 200 miles away and back, right?
Not going off-roading, you're not.
Right. I can't go off-roading with it. I can't go, use it to go pick up my football team or something like that and get mud all over the back of it and return it to you that way. I certainly can't go lend it to somebody else, right? And nor can I go profit from you wouldn't want me to go run a business by...
So you have an Uber moving truck with my...
Exactly, with your car. So it's the same sort of thing. It's the spirit of our agreement now they're putting into the letter of the law and saying you have to honor the spirit of that agreement. A consumer is like the lender of the pickup truck in that they are lending their data for a specific use for a period of time, not to be used for other reasons, and certainly not to be profited on from these businesses.
This whole thing is just nutty. And obviously, people aren't really looking into it enough just yet based on the answers that you saw. So with that in mind, you had mentioned just a few seconds ago, there's an awful lot for things people to start looking into. What are the next steps, really?
Yeah, and Tim gave up 6, so I'm going to borrow from his 6. Number 1 is sound the alarm. Like, this is a really big point. And whether you are a vendor watching this or whether you are in a brand and you're watching this, sound the alarm. And make sure that folks know about this. Number 2 is education. You need to go get some. I'd like to say that Digital Clarity Group is a good source of that education. You can watch our webinar and replay. We're running a lot of these things, but there's a lot of information out there about it, although not as prevalent as you might think. Conferences, etc. Create a cross-departmental working group. Because you're going to have this, obviously those from marketing and IT and sales and all across your organization. You need to get a good good working group together to be able to go and evaluate this. You need to take stock of where are you capturing data today, in what systems does it reside, how are you using it, all those sorts of things to even just understand the implication for you. Then plot that roadmap. What do you need to change? What do you need to do differently between here and there? And then his final one was even investigate new ways to capitalize on this. So, specifically for some vendors, there might be some really interesting ways that they can be first to market to help companies become compliant, that sort of thing. But I think there's actually ways for how can you be profitable and compete actually with GDPR, wind in your sails.
Wow, I think we could probably do 7 different shows on this.
You really could, and the implications are vast. It does change a lot of the landscape, and it's not talked about very much, and I really think that it should be.
Wow. Wild stuff, to say the least. There's no question about it. But we got to wrap up this show, and that's all the time we have today's show. But make sure you visit our website, cms-connected.com, for information on upcoming episodes, or watch previous episodes and get caught up on all the latest headline news. Now, before we go, however, I'd like again to thank both of our sponsors, Falcon-Software and Digital Clarity Group. They make this entire thing happen. And of course, on behalf of my co-host, Scott Liewehr, and our special guest, Arthur Lawida, I'm Tyler Pyburn. I can't even say my own last name, saying so long till next time. And remember, get connected, stay connected, right here on CMS Connected.